So the Derek Chauvin trial for the murder of George Floyd starts tomorrow morning with opening statements. Let's talk about whether we're going to see any justice for George Floyd, for his family, for the community, for our country. Because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So the Derek Chauvin trial for the murder of George Floyd is scheduled to begin in earnest with opening statements tomorrow. I want to try to do a series of videos, perhaps one each day, short videos, and talk in real time about what we see going on in the George Floyd murder trial. And what I'm going to try to do is predict where the defense might be going on any particular issue and then try to knock it down, try to rebut it, try to respond to it. And today I want to start with something in the autopsy report that I'm sure the defense is going to offer up as somehow being helpful to Derek Chauvin's defense. Here's the autopsy report from the Hennepin County Medical Examiner, Dr. Andrew Baker. And I want to talk about what he found when he examined George Floyd's neck, both the exterior and then the interior during the autopsy. And what he found couldn't be stated any more plainly. It's on page 2. He found no life-threatening injuries. He goes on to describe that there were no injuries of anterior muscles of neck or laryngeal structures. What does that mean? It means he didn't find any significant injuries to George Floyd's neck. So the defense attorney might point to that portion of the autopsy report and say, you see, my client Derek Chauvin wasn't really putting any pressure on George Floyd's neck, notwithstanding what it looked like in the video, notwithstanding the fact that George Floyd was saying repeatedly, I can't breathe. He really wasn't putting any pressure on his neck, because if he was, you would have seen injuries to his neck. Here's the thing, folks. The veins and the arteries that take oxygenated blood to and from the brain, you know how much pressure you need to put on somebody's neck to significantly diminish, all but cut off that oxygenated blood going to and from the brain? 4 pounds of pressure. 4 pounds. So Derek Chauvin, with his knee on his neck, notwithstanding an absence of injuries to Mr. Floyd's neck, Derek Chauvin was cutting off the blood flow to and from George Floyd's brain. And that's part of what killed him. Now, I want to take on one other thing, and then I'm going to keep these videos short because I hope to put them up every day. Here's the other thing. Because this is a severed trial, what does that mean? Only Derek Chauvin is on trial. The other officers have been severed out, and they're going to be tried separately from Derek Chauvin. There's a natural tendency in severed trials. I know, because I've handled all sorts of criminal trials in my 30 years as a federal prosecutor. There's a natural tendency for the defendant on trial to say, it's the other defendant or defendants who are the bad guys, who are the killers, who did all the real damage. You should hold them accountable, not me. All I did was put a little bit of pressure on George Floyd's neck. That dog ain't gonna hunt. You know why? Because Derek Chauvin's lawyer can try to say that the officers who were putting pressure on George Floyd's torso were really the ones killing him, because they were putting so much pressure on his body, on his chest, on his torso, that he couldn't breathe. He couldn't get enough oxygen into his lungs to become oxygenated to then flow to the brain and keep him alive. Well, guess what? It was both things in combination that killed George Floyd. And when you really absorb the autopsy report, that's the conclusion. It was the pressure on the torso, which indeed made it very difficult, if not impossible, for George Floyd to draw enough air into his lungs to oxygenate his blood, to keep his brain alive, to keep his heart functioning. So it was the pressure to the torso, and it was the pressure to the neck in combination. So it's not an either or proposition. Either Derek Chauvin is criminally responsible for killing George Floyd, or the other officers are. No, folks, they both are. They were both applying unlawful, long-term, injurious restraint to George Floyd. They suppressed his respiration. They stopped the blood flow to and from his brain, and he died under that restraint from Derek Chauvin and the other officers. And that's why the defense will try to embrace certain portions of the autopsy report as being exculpatory, being helpful, exonerating Derek Chauvin, but they will fail. They will fail. And we will be watching every minute of every trial day to make sure that justice is done by George Floyd, his family, the community, our country. Why? Well, because justice matters. Folks, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to posting one of these videos each day, trying to take on one issue that I think the defense will try to exploit, and I will try to knock it down.